Hi everyone. In this lesson, we are going to talk about past perfect continuous tense. The past perfect continuous, also called past perfect progressive, is used to show that an action started in the past and continued up to another point in the past. Let's check the events together now. As you see, here is the past and here is now and here is future. So this is the first action. They started to fight in 2010 and they stopped fighting or the war ended in 2014. As you see, it's the kind of action that started in the past and continued up to another point in the past. So this time, for these actions, we have to use the past perfect continuous tense. And the sentence is, they had been fighting for 4 years when the war ended in 2014. As you see, they started to fight in 2010 and the fight lasted 4 years and they stopped fighting in 2014. So, but both actions were in the past. They had been fighting for 4 years when the war ended in 2014. The past perfect continuous is also used to talk about an action that happened before another action in the past to show cause and effect. For example, Jason was tired, so why? Because he had been jogging. Again, it's a kind of action in the past, and it's a kind of cause and effect sentence. The second one, Sam put on weight. And what was the reason? Because she had been overeating. And the last one, Betty failed the final test because she hadn't been attending class. Let's go on with the sentence structures of the past perfect continuous tense. Let's start with the positive form. In positive form, first we use the subject at the beginning of the sentence, and then after the subject we use had been, had and been, and the ing form of the verb. So, I had been working since they went. The second subject is you. Again, we use you at the beginning of the sentence, and then after you, we use had, and after had, we always use been and the ing form of the verb. You had been sleeping for 4 hours, or he or she or it had been eating since I came here. We had been waiting for 2 hours, and you had been dancing since you came to the party, and they had been talking for half an hour. There's an important note here. You can also use this type as the short type of had. Instead of I had been working, you can say I've been working, or you can write like that. There's an exercise about it now. Complete the following sentences with the positive form of past perfect continuous tense with the verbs given in brackets. I'll wait for you for a while. Please check the sentences carefully and just remember the structure of the sentence and then complete the sentences with the positive form of past perfect continuous tense. Okay, let's do it together. As you see, here is the subject I and here is the verb. So just remember, after the subject, we use had been and the ing form of the verb. So I had been working all day, so I didn't want to go out. And the second one, She had been sleeping for 4 hours when I woke up. And 3, when we met, you had been working in that company for 6 years. And 4, it had been raining for 2 hours and the road was covered in water. And 5, they had been living in Adana for 3 years when he lost his job. Question 6. I was really tired because I had been studying since I got up. And 7. He was red in the face because he had been running for an hour. Let's go on with the negative form this time. Again, in negative form, we use the subject at the beginning of the sentence. After the subject, we use had, but it's a kind of negative form. That's why we have to use not here. And after had, we use not, and then been, and again the ing form of the verb. I had not been working since they went. You had not been sleeping for 2 days. He or she or it had not been eating since I came here. We had not been waiting for 2 hours. You had not been dancing since you came to the party. And they had not been talking for a week. And again, if you want, you can also use hadn't as the short type of had not. So instead of I had not been working since they went, you can use hadn't. There is an exercise here. Complete the following sentences with the negative form of past perfect continuous tense with the verbs given in brackets. This time you are going to complete the sentences with the negative form of past perfect continuous tense. Yes, the first one. Just remember, again, we use the subject at the beginning of the sentence and then hadn't, this time, it's a kind of negative form, hadn't been, and the ing form of the verb. It hadn't been raining long when I got home. The second one, she hadn't been working for 2 weeks, but she was tired anyway. And 3, we hadn't been living in London for 3 years when we got married. It was more like 5 years. And 4, he didn't feel healthy because he hadn't been going to the gym since last year. And 5, when they came, I hadn't been sleeping long. And the last one, they didn't come to the cinema because they hadn't been talking to each other since last week. Let's go on with the question form this time. We use had at the beginning of the sentence because it's the kind of question sentence. So first we use had, and after had we use the subject, and then we use been and the ing form of the verb. Had I been working since they went? Yes, you had, or no, you hadn't. These are the short answers. If you want to answer in full, we can say, yes, you had been working since they went, or no, you hadn't been working since they went. The second subject is you. Again, we use had at the beginning. Had you been sleeping for 4 hours? Yes, I had, or no, I hadn't. Had he or she or it been eating since I came here? Yes, he or she or it had, or no, he or she or it hadn't. Had we been waiting for 2 hours? Yes, you had, or no, you hadn't. Had you been dancing since you came to the party? Yes, we had, or no, we hadn't. Had they been talking for half an hour? Yes, they had, or no, they hadn't. Or yes, they had been talking for half an hour, or no, they hadn't been talking for half an hour. Complete the following sentences with the question form of past perfect continuous tense with the verbs given in brackets. This time, all of these sentences are question sentences, so you are going to complete them with the question form of past perfect continuous tense. Yes, the first one, just remember, being a question sentence, we have to use had at the beginning this time. So the answer is, had you been sleeping since I went to work? And the second one, had it been raining when you left the restaurant? And three, when they moved to London, had they been living in Brighton for 5 years? And four, had your mother been working for that company for 10 years? And five, had they been playing football for 2 hours when you went to home? And the last one, had he been sleeping since you went to work? Let's go on with WH question form. This time, when we have question words, we use like that. How long had the boss been waiting when Joe arrived? As you see, we have a question word here, how long. So we first use this question word at the beginning of the sentence, and after this question word, we use had this time. How long had the boss, the subject, and then been and the ing form of the verb? How long had the boss been waiting when Joe arrived? So, if you want to answer, the boss had been waiting for an hour when Joe arrived. As you know, we cannot answer these questions with yes or no because we have a question word and we need information. The correct information for this question is for an hour. The boss had been waiting for an hour when Joe arrived. The second one, what had she been reading for an hour when you went home? And she had been reading a novel when I went home. Another example, why had he been crying for an hour? And he had been crying for an hour because of his bad mark. And the last one, how long had it been raining when we arrived in Adana? And the answer is, it had been raining for 2 days when we arrived in Adana. Complete the following sentences with the WH question form of past perfect continuous tense with the verbs and the subjects given in brackets. Now, this time, you are going to form the sentences in question form, and you have to use the verbs and the subjects in brackets. Here's the first one. There was water everywhere. So, this is our subject, children, and do is our verb. So, this is a question word. After the question word, just remember we use had and then the subject and then being and the ing form of the verb. What had the children been doing? And the second one, how long had she been living in London when she found that job? And three, why was the house so messy? What had he been doing? And four, how long had we been waiting when the bus finally arrived? And five, how long had you been playing football when you were injured? And the last one, Who had you been talking to on the phone for an hour when I called you? Who had you been talking? If we have a question word, first we use it, and after this question word, we use had and then the subject, and then we use been and ing form of the verb. There's another exercise here for you. This time, please put the verbs into the correct form of past perfect continuous tense. This time, you have to decide on the form of the sentences, positive, negative, or question form. Yes, the first one. As you see, this sentence starts with the subject, and we have a verb here. So it seems to be a positive sentence. So the correct answer is they had been waiting at the station for 90 minutes when the train finally arrived. And the second one, as you see, there is not here. So we can understand that it's a kind of, or it must be a kind of negative sentence. So the second one, I hadn't been walking for a long time when it suddenly began to rain. And three, as you see, we have a question word here. So it's a kind of question sentence. How long had she been learning English before she went to London? And four, again, it's a kind of positive sentence. They were very tired in the evening because they had been helping on the farm all day. And five, it's a kind of positive sentence again. We had been sleeping for 12 hours when he woke us up. And question six, as you see, there is not here, so it must be a negative sentence. He hadn't been working all day, so he wasn't tired and went to the disco at night. And the last one, as you see, it's a kind of question sentence, and we don't have any question words here. Just remember, this time we have to start with had. So, had you been watching TV for 5 hours when your parents came home yesterday? There is an important note here for you. Just I want to remind you that we use past perfect continuous tense, had been verb ing, to show a visible result in the past. But we use present perfect continuous tense, just remember, have or has been verb ing, to show a visible result in the present. For example, let's check these two sentences so that you can understand better. The first one, I have been living in Adana for 7 years. As you see, it's a kind of present perfect continuous tense. I have been living in Adana. And so it's the kind of visible result in the present. This sentence means I started living in Adana 7 years ago and I still live in Adana. It's the kind of visible result in the present. But if I say I had been living in Adana for 7 years before I moved to Istanbul. It's the kind of past perfect continuous tense, had been living. So it is a kind of visible result in the past. And this sentence means I lived in Adana for 7 years and then I moved to Istanbul, but now it means I live in Istanbul. So it's the kind of visible result in the past. That's all for today. Thanks for listening.